Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation, folks. We have an abbreviated live show today, so we're going to just cover the first hour. But today we're going to talk about a Supreme Court justice decision case that's being heard by the Supreme Court about obstruction around the January 6th attacks and storming of the Capitol, an obstruction case that could possibly lead to former President Donald Trump being prosecuted from the highest court in the land. So we're gonna have that conversation. Also, as it relates to January 6th, let's talk about the Georgia election worker that testified in the defamation case against former mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, and what Michelle Moss had to say as how her life has been turned upside down, inside out as a result of the lies that the former mayor has been spewing about her. So we'll have those conversations. Of course, we're going to be streaming live on our platforms. Make sure you join us in the conversation on Roland Martin's YouTube page and be a part of the culture crew for the day. But of course, stay tuned. We got a lot to cover in the first half of the show right here on the culture on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we're going to just have an abbreviated live show today for the first half of the show, as I got to be on daddy duty doing some things with my son. So we're going to just have this first hour, but I truly appreciate it for you to be a part of the conversation, and more importantly, for you to tune in today. As we're streaming live on various platforms, first and foremost, we're streaming on our home platform of blackstarnetwork.com. You can go to our website today, download the link on all of your devices, follow us on social media under Black Star Network, and of course, we ask for your financial donations, which will make a world of difference for us as we are powering our way through this digital space. So go to blackstarnetwork.com and be a part and invest and be a stakeholder in this movement. Also, we're streaming on Amazon platforms, on Amazon News, on your Fire TV. We're also streaming on Amazon Prime Video, and you can find us on the Prime Video app under Live TV and News, or find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video. And we're also streaming on Freevee, which is on now with news, where you can check us out on Freevee, and on Plex TV. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just search for Black Star Network. We'll find us on the live TV, the news and opinion. All right, folks, big shout out to my online culture crew that is checking in. That's right. Folks that are already in the chat. Big shout out to them. Pastor Damon Blissett. Hey, Kings and Queens, I see you. Pauline Hurt, I see you. Conscious Thought, I definitely see you. Thank you so much for checking in, brother. ABX Girl, first one in the chat. Thank you so much. The first one I saw. Thank you so much. My sister Karen Connor, good to connect with you once again. Cindy D, I definitely see you. Pretty Brown Mimi 726. Mimi, you on time, I'm on time. It's going to be a great day, Mimi. How about that? Deidre Hall, thank you so much. Hey, Culture Crew. Hey, Deidre. Thank you so much for checking in. And again, folks, we are streaming live on Roland Martin's Facebook page and Roland Martin's YouTube page. And you on both pages, you can be a part of the conversation and join us as we have these discussions. It is Wednesday, and I got my sister just for a short time today, and I'm very excited to have her once again. She is an attorney out of the state of Florida. She is the host of the Suzette Speak Show on YouTube, and she is a political strategist. We welcome her back to the airways of the Black Star Network. And folks, make sure tonight y'all check her out on RMU.
Yes. Exciting stuff. Hey, everybody. A little congested, but it's always exciting to be here. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Everybody's getting sick, Suzanne. I don't know what's going on. It is. I'm telling you. Let's jump right into it, Suzette. Talk to us about, let's talk a little bit about this situation out of the Supreme Court out of Washington, D.C. They're planning to hear a bunch of major cases to make some decisions. But one of the decisions is to hear about the January 6th case that many people say could affect Trump's prosecution. They're going to consider whether a charge for seeking to obstruct an official proceeding, which Trump also faces, can be applied to the events on January the 6th of 2021. They're going to hear this case brought by the defendant, Joseph Fisher, who is seeking to dismiss a charge accusing him of obstructing an official proceeding, namely the certification by Congress of President Joe Biden's election victory, which was disrupted, of course, by that mob of Trump supporters. Then there's two other January 6 defendants, Edward Lang and Garrett Miller, brought similar appeals, the outcome of which will be dictated by the Supreme Court's ruling in Fisher's case. This is interesting. This is very interesting. So you have these three individuals who are involved in this case because they were on the grounds, they were there on January the 6th. And now it looks like these three cases might be the light that opens up everything, including the prosecution of Donald Trump. Talk to me about this. What are we going to be? What should we expect to see from the Supreme Court at this point, Suzanne?
Well, again, greetings to all the culture crew out there. See you guys in the chat. Glad you're here. So yes, Farajii, this is going to be a very busy season for the United States Supreme Court. Now, you have mentioned that there are three individuals that are seeking the Supreme Court's ruling on their January 6 cases. But in addition, we have special counsel Jack Smith, who is conducting a case against Donald Trump, who's also trying to get the Supreme Court to rule on an issue in his case. So you have to remember that Jack Smith is scheduled to start his trial March 4th. And in that case, he has brought charges against former President Trump for helping to incite not only the mob, but to obstruct the continuation of the government and passage of power to the duly elected president at the time, Joe Biden. So in his case, Jack Smith just recently filed this week. He's asking the Supreme Court to jump over like what is normal tradition. So basically, when we have these cases, they normally have to climb up the ladder from the district court, which is the lower court, then the middle court, which is the appeals court, and then from the appeals court, an appeal can be filed all the way to the Supreme Court. But Jack Smith has asked for an urgent ruling on this key issue. He's asking the Supreme Court to decide whether or not a president is immune from prosecution for crimes during his presidency. So what Jack is doing is looking in the future. He knows what Trump's lawyers are going to argue, and which is that this case can't be brought anyway because President Trump was just simply in their defense arguments. They state that he was just performing his duties as president. But Jack Smith wants the Supreme Court to come forward, and they have decided that they will hear arguments on whether or not they should take this issue right away, as he has filed his brief this week. In that brief, he cites the Nixon case, which is really the only other precedent where it was a matter of national urgency, is what he's saying, that we need to understand, where does the president lie? Is the president a king, or can the president be held to account, as I'm trying to do with the charges I've filed? So he wants to get this out of the way so they don't postpone anymore, and that he will not have to move his March 4th trial date back. So they have agreed that there should be arguments filed. They have contacted Trump's defense team. They have until December 20th to file their arguments as to why it should not be heard in such an expeditious manner. And we're going to see if they do take that up. So along with those other cases that you've mentioned, this one specifically, as it relates to the president, is one of the ones that people are waiting with bated breath to see if they indeed do want to rule on it. Because remember, the Supreme Court gets to choose and pick which cases it actually gets to.
Wow. Look, we got to take our first pause. When we come forward, let's talk a little bit more about this with our sister Suzette, and of course, folks, with you. Post your comments in the chat as we're streaming live on Roland Martin's YouTube page. But what are your thoughts about this as the Supreme Court hears cases that speaks to obstruction of justice as it relates to the January 6th storming of the Capitol, the interruption of the proceedings for the certification of President Joe Biden's victory, and possible Trump fate? So share your thoughts and post your comments and questions. And of course, stay with us. We're just getting started here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, joined by my sister, Suzette Speaks, who is an attorney and host of the Suzette Speaks show on YouTube. As we talk about the Supreme Court's, their agenda in terms of hearing a number of major cases where they're going to have to make big decisions. One of those big decisions is about this idea of obstruction of the law. And this is, of course, surrounding the situation with January the 6th. 3 defendants whose cases have been brought to the Supreme Court's attention, and whether the president is even involved or can be prosecuted as it relates to the obstruction of justice in disrupting the official proceedings and certification of Joe Biden's election victory. Now, according to the federal public defender representing one of the defendants, Mr. Fisher, Joseph Fisher, he said he was pleased that his name is Fritz Ulrich. He said he was pleased that the court will clarify the scope of the law in question. So is that a good thing that the court is going to have to kind of like deal with what obstruction means, especially on a federal level, especially as it relates to the president of the United States? Is this a good thing just for the law in general, in period?
Yeah, I do believe, especially when it comes to these defendants, they are in fact celebrating that they are going to get a little bit more of a day to clarify or the court to clarify what exactly their behaviors in their specific cases. Did their behavior actually meet the standard of what is obstruction? I think right now, when it comes to what observers are going to be following as to whether or not, those 3 cases have any type of impact on what Trump's desire is, which is to kind of also have this kind of wall of immunity to say that nothing that they actually did actually meets the standard of what it means to obstruct justice. So I do think in the small, I would say smaller, those lesser known defendants cases, they're going to have different impact. I do think it'll be good in terms of their legal defense, their opportunity to say that what they did, they specifically did that day on January 6th. It wasn't necessarily meant to obstruct the actual proceedings, but I do think the larger case that looms, which is the Trump or Jack Smith petition of the court to hear whether or not even this type of case can apply to any president coming beyond Donald Trump, as to whether or not they are immune from any prosecution at all, as to anything illegal that they may have done while they were sitting in that Oval Office. So I do think they'll have different implications, but I do think both will be kind of beneficial, I guess you would say, to the public at large.
Now, just to clarify for folks that may not know this, but former President Trump is actually, he's going to trial because of the same offense of obstruction of justice. And they were saying that in this report from NBC News, it's going to take the justices months for them to hear the oral arguments from both sides and to possibly issue a ruling. We know that the Supreme Court serves on a 9-month term. Their term ends every June of the year. And so there are some who are saying that Trump's lawyers could possibly use that time or just use the fact that the Supreme Court is involved as a way to delay his election interference trial that's scheduled for March. How do you think that would play out? Do you see that possibly happening?
Well, no, Jack Smith has actually anticipated this. That's why I think that he has tried to subvert that type of outcome by asking for an expedited hearing. That's why I said it breaks with tradition. Normally, it will take that long time to kind of wind its way back through the smaller court, the lower court, the middle court, and then, of course, the Supreme Court. Jack Smith wants it to go directly. He's basically leapfrogging those other kind of normal procedures to say, please, Supreme Court, hear us out right now so that there won't be any delay. So think about it this way. If Trump's team actually believed what they're arguing, which is that the president is fully immune from any prosecution based on any behavior that he has committed while in office, then they would want this hearing right away. But they actually want it to be delayed. So it is now up to Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who has made that motion as of Monday. They have set a date down for hearing to argue the motion, whether or not this type of case justifies an expedited hearing. And so he's trying to push the court's hands, which is, again, totally outside of tradition. As you mentioned, it normally would take this long time to travel through not only the courts, but along the Supreme Court docket is what it's called. The cases that they choose to take up take a long time to decide. So Jack Smith has kind of looked into the future and knows the games that will be, or the maneuvers, I would say the legal maneuvers that will be played. So he's trying to say, Supreme Court, look what happened in the Nixon case, where the national legal framework as to what a president should or should not be doing, or how a president should or should not be treated, is in the balance. We need you to decide this right now. So they can't say, let's dismiss his case on March 4th. The Supreme Court will have already decided either you have immunity as president from all behavior that takes place while you're serving, or you don't. So I think there's a strong case to be made once that hearing date was set, which will be, I think, as said, both sides have until December 20th to file their brief, to file their arguments to, for or against, to the Supreme Court for or against their ability to hear this in an expedited manner. So those other cases with the three individuals that you have named don't have this same type of, again, pressing kind of national implication. This man is possibly going to be, on the ballot for president. So Jack Smith has laid out in his brief this week as to why that motion, please hear this right away, Supreme Court, should be heard, and they're going to take up the motion. They won't be ruling yet on whether or not he is immune or not immune, but as to just whether they should even hear it out of, the abundance of caution right away, so that that trial could take place as scheduled on March 4th within the framework and the time frame that has already been laid out. So it's a little bit different. One, like I said, has a much more pressing national implication. That's why Special Counsel Jack Smith has asked the Supreme Court, please hear this right away, and has broken with tradition and trying to expedite that hearing.
All right, let me just, we got like 30 seconds and I know we got to take our next pause, but I want to get your take on this. I'm going to ask for your political strategist hat to be put on. Do you think that over this next couple of months, while this case is being processed and heard and everything, do you think it's going to really have an impact on Trump's pursuit to be back into the White House? Do you think it's going to have any impact on the GOP side or even on the Democratic side?
I think his strategy is delay, because if there is a case that finally does make it to a final judgment, like a criminal case, I think him having a conviction, again, in a crime that is trying to subvert the transfer of power, that goes into the constitutional framework as to whether someone who has committed sedition, acts against the government, acts to overthrow the government, can even run. So I do think it will have an implication. If this case is allowed to be heard, or this motion is allowed to be heard nice and quickly, in December, early January, and then the Supreme Court rules expeditiously if they choose to, I think it will have an implication. These cases are kind of stacked up as we're getting into the campaign season. So I do think it will have an impact, especially in places where there are a lot more moderate voters or MPAs, as to whether or not he is actually convicted of trying to overthrow the government. I think for some people who are in the middle, I don't think for his base it'll make any difference. But for some people who are like, we don't want the drama for our government. We have bigger problems. We have inflation. We have other things that we want to focus on.
Yeah.
Why are we going to spend our vote on someone who's going to bring with him all of this kind of chaos, right? This legal limbo. So I do think it will have an impact as to how people will start voting in the primaries that we'll be doing Iowa in less than 5 weeks. So I do think it will eventually have an impact on those who are going in the ballot box.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's shift gears from talking about President Trump to talking about that Georgia election worker who was defamed by former mayor of New York, Mayor Rudy Giuliani, and how that case is moving forward. But more importantly, the testimony, the heartbreaking testimony that she had given in terms of how her life has been changed as a result of this situation. We'll talk a little bit more about that, get your take on that as well. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, joined by my sister, contributor Suzette Speaks. And y'all make sure y'all check her out tonight on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Yes.
And she will be giving her expertise on a host of issues on the Big Guys show. So that's at tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Suzette, let's talk a little bit about this situation with the Georgia election worker who's suing former Mayor Rudy Giuliani for defamation.
Rudy.
Sweaty Rudy.
I'm tired of Rudy. But yes, please go ahead. Sorry, former Mayor Giuliani. Let's go ahead.
So Miss Wandrea Shea Moss, she took the witness stand during the defamation trial that will determine how much Giuliani must pay her and her mother for spreading lies about them. They were a part. These are the two black women who also testified at the January 6th committee hearings a few months ago. But they are seeking tens of millions of dollars in damages from Giuliani in this particular case. The lawyers for both women, the women's lawyers estimated that reputational damages could reach 47 million and suggested emotional and punitive damages on top of that could be tens of millions. Now, according to Giuliani's lawyer, because a lawyer needs a lawyer, he said that the award should be much less, describing the damages the women are seeking as the, quote, civil equivalent of the death penalty.
This mayor, former mayor, and I will say former President Trump again. I know some of you guys are correcting me in the chat. Just say former. Yes, former Mayor Giuliani. Wow, how far he has fallen down. Now
he's falling down. Now here's the thing. And I want us to talk about this because she gave a heartfelt testimony outside of the money and all of that stuff. This woman's life, Suzette, has been completely uprooted. She says she was an outgoing, bubbly woman. Now she says she suffers in a lonely cycle of crying, depression, and nightmares. Part of her testimony, she said, I'm most scared of my son finding me or my mom hanging in front of our house on a tree, having to get news at school that his mother was killed. She said that back in January of 2021, probably around the same time as the January 6th situation, she said someone came to her grandmother's door threatening to make a quote unquote citizen's arrest. She's just not the same anymore. All right, Suzanne, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think it's important that this. First of all, I applaud these ladies for filing this lawsuit. Come on. So we're in the United States District Court again, right, in DC, and we're looking at this civil case because it's two people filing a lawsuit against another one for lying about them, on them, as we say. And so Shea Moss and Ruby Freeman, her mom, decided to file this lawsuit to correct the record, right? Because we have to think about, as Farajii just kind of iterated, the intensity as to what happened to them right after that election lie, right? So not only did they lie about these two women in detail, Former Mayor Giuliani went so far as to accuse them of treasonous acts, saying that there was a video of them passing a USB discs and things as if they were, in his words, passing heroin or drugs. And the defamatory lies just continued on and on and on right after the election. So much so, as they pointed out in the testimony heard yesterday, the phone calls, the phone messages, the threats to their lives. It's not about the money. It's about what they endured. When you listen to the racist rancor that these women have had to endure, Shane Moss says as soon as she got home and started seeing videos online of herself, she took her blonde, cut it, dyed it, tried to move. People found her new address, started sending stuff there, afraid to go out, afraid to go to the grocery store, afraid to live, couldn't work. So we're talking about, you have a former mayor of New York City working alongside the former president, who have called you out in a way that was untrue, so much so that all of his followers started to, or many of his followers started to incite, violent language and threats and slurs against you, and that became your life. So when we're talking about, what happened, sometimes it's easy to forget because it's kind of time has passed, but I'm so glad they're creating a record of what really took place. Now, what got me, my mind was boggled by former Mayor Giuliani, was that after the judge earlier this year has already found him liable for his statements that he lied. Right? Remember that he had already made an admission. We discussed it right here on this show.
Right.
Made an admission, wrote it, put it in the court record, and said, okay, yes, I did make false statements. But then we saw him this week, Monday, in fact, in front of a microphone, making the very same false statements about these women yet again. So much so that Judge Beryl Howell, the U.S. District Judge who's overseeing this case, came out to his attorneys and was like, what are we going to do here? He is now possibly going to take the stand, and I won't allow it if he's going to come back in with the same false statements we've already decided, and he's already admitted to, that they were in fact lies and deceitful and therefore damaging and defaming against these women. So it's like he hasn't learned his lesson. Now his attorney is arguing that, again, the type of, and I know we have to take a break. We'll talk about the damages in a second. I know we have to take a break. Sorry.
Yeah. And here's my big question on you for the other side. We're going into an election season. Does that mean that this case will serve as a precedent for coming up with new laws or some sort of policies, whether it's federal or on a state level, to protect election workers? Because that's what I foresee happening. I think the Democratic Party can use this as a way to say, you know what, to cut down on this level of voter suppression, voter intimidation, voter harassment, let's put something new in place to protect election workers, maybe removing their home address or something. Like, I don't know, but some sort of measure to protect this, because there's no way in the world that a case like this, with so much profile and so much violation of civil rights, mental health, and all of this, and then after this case is resolved, we are not gaining from it, because that means that the pain, the struggle of these two Black women would have gone in vain. This could be the case that changes how election workers are protected, are handled around this country. So that's my question to you as we get back from the other side of this, Suzette. Folks, stay tuned. We'll continue the conversation on the other side right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause to long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Checking in with my sister Suzette Speaks as we're talking about this Georgia election worker, Miss Shay Moss, who has testified in the defamation case against Rudy Giuliani. Now, talk to us, Suzette, because you were making a point about this some of the damages that were made and even being asked for by Shay Moss and her mom, Mother Ruby Freeman as well. Talk to us about that.
Yes, I want to touch on that because, again, when we look at these cases, sometimes we forget the harm, the irreparable harm that is caused to individuals by someone with a platform like former Mayor Giuliani. So at the time, again, at the end of the January 6th insurrection riot at the White House, on the steps of the Congress, it was really frightening as to how many people were affected by the fallout, right? All of the accusations, all the false cases. Remember, there was over 100 cases around the country filed, and none of them stuck as to saying that there was some sort of irregularities in terms of the count, irregularities in terms of how election workers were handling votes, et cetera, et cetera. So these two ladies actually became like, the poster children, if you will, for the movement that was trying to press the government, so-called, officials at the time within the Trump administration that was leaving office to find a way to stay there. We have to just recognize the determination that was there, which was to find a way to stay in power and not transfer power, and to blame individuals like Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman was just wrong in so many ways. So we know that the judge already ruled against Mr. Giuliani, right? Mr. Giuliani actually signed again into the record that he admitted that what he did was fabricate and defame these ladies. So I was looking at the testimony yesterday and watching some of the reports that came out. A witness named Ashley Humphreys, who is a social media expert and professor at Northwestern University, was just talking about how do you calculate damages in this. And again, this is very interesting to me as a personal attorney. So I was looking at it in that regard. But anyway, she said just on what they could have earned, what, how their lives were disrupted, et cetera, they could be looking at, and they are asking the judge to rule at possibly 17 million at the lower end and 47 million at the higher end. And again, as you said, Mr. Giuliani's attorneys are saying, again, that is the death penalty for him. But again, he stood on the courthouse steps Monday and repeated back the same lies, like this week, like as the trial is happening. So much so that it had to be addressed. So just looking at it, sometimes I don't even think of it. Sometimes we hear these big numbers and okay, is that justified, et cetera. You got to think about people's lives and how much their lives have been disrupted and can never be the same, right?
Oh, that's the thing.
Damages, and the judge, like I said, continues to scold Mr. Giuliani and his legal team for repeating the same lies the week of, the case almost coming to a close, so much so that he may not be able to take the stand because the judge doesn't want him to get on the stand and repeat the same lies again. So it is really frustrating to see and kind of mind-boggling to see a person that has not learned his lesson, and maybe it does take some kind of outcome with a high dollar value that will, get the message across very clearly. To your Farajii, also, when you were talking about changes in election laws, I thought the first thing that will most likely happen for this, as a result of this, is just like a cooling off of finding willing. Remember, these ladies were volunteers. Right. So oftentimes we think about our elections as being, run by the supervisor of elections office, et cetera. But a lot of the people that help us hold free and fair elections are volunteers. So
I was an election worker. I was an election worker in Baltimore.
I've been a poll watcher. I've been,
I've worked the polls. Yeah.
And we donate time to making sure our country lives up to its credence, right? To say that every vote counts. No one should be intimidated. No one should have any advantage or disadvantage. If you are a citizen and you wish to vote, you should be able to do so, right? It's the great equalizer. No matter how much money you have or don't have, your vote and my vote have the same value. So
let's put this also in a proper context too, Suzette. And I'm glad that you made this point. Nobody expects, like when you are a volunteer, when you are a poll watcher, when you go in to assist on election day, right? It's a long day. It's, you're talking about 12 hours at least, 12 hours or so. It's a long day. But you don't think much of it. You're thinking, okay, I'm doing something for my civil, it's like a civil duty, a civic service, right? You don't think much of it. You don't think that you're going to be embroiled in the middle of a national controversy, right? Like your name is coming up into your name as an election worker in a state is now a part of the language coming from the president of the United States. And I'm talking about not in a good way.
Right.
Not in a good way. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, these two black women, and Trump knew, Giuliani knew, these are two black older, daughter, mother and daughter. They knew, they two black women, right? Two black women. You want to beat up on the black woman, and people can say, oh, the race is not involved with it. He didn't do that with no other election worker. He didn't do that. And Georgia has a lot of different people in there.
Right.
So you can't say, well, it's not racist. No, you wanted to beat up on two black women. You about to get your ass kicked now in court. You about to get, now you talking about, oh, it's too much money. You should have thought about that before you open your mouth. But that's crazy. You wanted to take advantage of that. All right, let me just get these comments very quickly. Karen, my sister, Karen Connor, you said Miss Moss and Miss Freeman's lives were traumatized and destroyed by lies. They will suffer from PTSD for the rest of their lives and deserve the highest award possible. Yeah.
And their safety. Again, some of this stuff never sleeps. It's the internet. So no matter what, they're part of that kind of like dark web of people who are, looking for trouble. If you listen to some of the recordings that were played in court yesterday with the people threatening them and hurling racial slurs at them, calling them seditious, and they hope they burn in hell and all this stuff. I'm like, that is just,
it's crazy.
Talk about
it's
PTSD.
crazy.
That's
Let
on your voicemail, and they
that's
still
what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you got to play that in court, and you got to play it again. You got to play it again. You got to play it again, and it's traumatizing. It's triggering, and more importantly, Democrats, and I'm serious, and I'm being very serious. Democrats going to have to figure out, like, yo, how can we protect this? Because you have one of the most consequential elections coming up. We know that South Carolina is one of the first areas that's going to be for the primaries. Like, how are you going to protect Black election workers? How are you going to do that? And you can't just say, well, they'll protect themselves. This is a clear case to show that Black election workers in particular need to have something to fall back on, need to have some protection, need to make sure that their lives aren't uprooted like it was for these two sisters. Like, something has to be done. There's no way, Suzette, that this case can go as far as it's going. The courage of these two Black women to keep saying and speaking their truth, telling their story, going before Congress, going before this judge in the face of all of this. And you mean to tell me that we can't get something out of making sure that no other Black election worker goes through this again? I can't believe it.
I would hope, but with a divided Congress and with what we've seen in the House, etc., I don't know that there's any political will right now in our Congress, among our Congress, to do what probably needs to be done, which is to give us kind of stronger election laws. Typically, we've seen that election laws are allowed to remain in the hands of the states and really locally. Right here in Florida, with the 67 counties we have, when I work the elections statewide, you basically have 67 little, what we call fiefdoms. Those supervisors of elections and those rules in each and every one of those counties and what people are allowed to do beyond the general statutes of the state, it can be very, very localized and complex. Right. So I agree with you. It would make sense to develop a federal framework, whether or not we have the appetite or the will across the aisle with a House that is still divided and controlled by Republicans. I just don't see it happening in the near future. But perhaps if there is a change of the guard in terms of how the House is distributed come 2024, perhaps we could actually get some common sense, bipartisan legislation that says but we can't get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So you get what I'm saying? So the federal appetite might not be there, but perhaps on the local level, we could see some changes.
Corinna, you checked in. Our sister Corinna checked in on this, Suzette. She said, I dare say a large fraction are more familiar with what Dems supposedly are not doing and no clue about two of our own being traumatized for doing their civic duty for the good of our people. Absolutely. A. Mosley checked in. Yes, we need to vote for our two ladies. I agree. We need to stop questioning the power of the vote. We need to be historic. Those two ladies were, again, just doing their job. Vote blue. Grandma Sings, too. Checking in. Thank you, Grandma Sings. And thank you, thank you, A. Mosley. Grandma Sings, too. You said we must remember that Ms. Shea and Ms. Ruby were harassed at the federal level. If this had happened at the state level, the story may have been tragic. Can you speak on that very quickly?
Well, what they're saying is by federal officials of the Trump administration at the time, right? So they had national kind of power and platforms to bring attention to these two women down in Georgia that were just doing their job. So if this also could and possibly have happened in terms of that type of harassment and lies and defamation that took place maybe from a state official, we know what time it is in Georgia. So I can see, that is so solely conjecture. There are a lot of good people in Georgia. Let's go.
Yeah.
But if someone with that same kind of power and made the same false accusations, it is dangerous. No matter what state you're in, it is absolutely dangerous. So yeah, it could have cost them their lives at the federal level. I see what you're saying. Says at the Georgia, within the state level, if this had happened, where would we see a different outcome? Actually, you got me thinking. If this has happened where someone who was leaving office, maybe from a governor's office or from another office, or was openly accusing two individuals of doing what Rudy Giuliani and many others in the outgoing Trump administration did at the time, what it would look like. I would hope they would bring the same type of lawsuit. But again, no matter who says these type of allegations that are unfounded, there's no evidence. They were passing ginger mints. That is fact. That you would sit up on a national platform and continue to lie and lie and lie. I'm grateful that they had the courage to step forward and say, you know what, we're still going to file a civil lawsuit and make sure we correct the record for ourselves, for our own legacies, so that people understand that what he did was wrong and that he has to be held to account.
Hey, Suzette, very quickly as we close out today, what's the timeline for the ruling on this defamation case?
I think they're in closing arguments. They're in closing arguments. So hopefully, I think by early in the first quarter, we will see what the outcome will be. Okay. I don't think there doesn't seem to be any other closing witnesses. I think they're both pretty much wrapped up on who they have as far as their experts as to damages. But yes, there might be an appeal. There may be an appeal thereafter, but I think within the first quarter of the year, we probably will have an outcome.
There it is. Suzette, I truly appreciate you so much for coming on to the show once again today, even just for a short period of time, giving us a lot of insight, a lot of stuff for us to think about. And, I think you and I are on the same page on this. Give Ms. Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss the bank.
Let's go.
Let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't have no hatred in your heart. Don't get no envy and no jealousy. These sisters have endured a lot.
It takes a lot to stand up to the established,
to the Trump machine.
Yeah.
To the Trump machine. It takes a lot.
It's a big deal what they're doing.
And look, they are just a couple of black women who are joining other black women who are unraveling the Trump machine just piece by piece, taking the screws out. You want to, and it's crazy. And I mean, I'm serious. Like, if y'all see the connection between all of this stuff around Trump and how it comes back to a black woman is at the root of dismantling all of this stuff. Woo!
Listen, there's a whole dissertation I can write about that, but we're out of time.
All right, y'all. Make sure y'all check out my sister Suzette Speaks. She's going to be on Roland Martin Unfiltered tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. She's going to be dropping the jewels. She's going to be going back and forth. And, of course, she's going to be talking about the topics and issues. So we truly are so proud that she's just moving up in the ranks, continuing to do the great job. There we go. Wait a minute. That horn sounded kind of weak. Where's that?
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate the love. Thank y'all so much. Always a pleasure.
And make sure y'all follow her on all social media. Make sure y'all follow her. Suzette Speaks on all social media platforms. Follow her on her YouTube page and support her show. And I thank you, Suzette, for always being with us and, of course, for being so good for the culture.
Hey, I appreciate you, my brother. I'll see you next week.
See you next week. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me, but for the live portion. But stick around. We got some more great conversations coming up for you. But I thank you for tuning in so far for the first half of the show. God willing, we will be back live with you tomorrow for another exciting edition. As always, make sure you support us here at Black Star Network. Go to our website today, download the app for free, follow us on social media, and give something to support us here at Black Star Network as we move forward in this digital space. I'm your brother, Farajii Muhammad. I look forward to connecting with you live tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things
that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. This is an opportunity for us to be able to speak to our issues.
Y'all better understand something real quick. We ain't going nowhere.
It is a continual battle that we see all across this country. Revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be streamed.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
He makes sure that our stories are told.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. I am joined by our second special guest, Dr. Carrie Mitchell Brown, who is the founder and principal of KMB, but she is an equity strategist and cultural architect. She has done major work in organizational development. She's a social justice advocate. She's worked with individuals, organizations, and businesses and corporations. And she is the one that you will call on if you want to create a different culture within your business, a holistic cultural shift, as he said, a seismic shift in your business. And more importantly, this is not about profits as it is about people. This is about making sure that everyone understands the value of each other. And I think this is interesting because we put this under the context of anti-blackness in corporate America. I got two big questions for you. I thought I had one. Now I got two. One is, Dr. Carey, do you see, what grade would you give corporate America in their stance in relationship with Black folks? Is corporate America more open to Blackness, or is it less open to Blackness, or there hasn't been really any change? And I'm going to use the metric that everybody else uses. Since George Floyd of 2020, 3 years later, we're talking about race and white supremacy. We're talking about all these things. But is corporate America listening?
I believe that corporate America can take the lead on this. I would say that there's still a lot of work to do in order to do that. I mean, they are impacted by what's happening in the world. I mean, we have not made a ton of progress. I mean, our numbers do not lie. Our maternal rates, our murder rates, our maternal death rates, our education rates, our incarceration rates, they're all still disproportionate. There's still disproportionate access and opportunity and success within organizations. And without doing something intentional, sort of getting under the hood, identifying what's getting in the way and doing something different, we will continue to get the same things we always got. We will continue to have the disproportionate impact around success in companies that we see outside. And so it takes some intentionality from everyone, especially the leaders at the top, making the investments. I say invest now or go bankrupt later, and we're seeing that happen.
So that sounds like a grade of D.
I would say we're not passing. D's do not mean degrees at this time.
So is it? Oh, can we say D? Like I give corporate America a D right now for its efforts to really include, have a more culturally competent approach to things. Can we say that?
Yeah, I would say overall a D, a C minus, at best. I mean, when we ask Black folks in organizations, do you feel seen? Does your manager really know you? Are they invested in your success? Is my voice heard? The company says it values diversity, equity, and inclusion, but do people that look like me have my shared experience in positions and leadership at my company? We know the answer to those questions. I mean, we're talking to our friends and we can get the answers to those questions. What does that look like within their organization? And I would say we have more no's than we do yeses. And so there's still a lot of work to do across the board. That's not saying that that is the case for every corporation, but for many, I would say we not passing or barely.
I'm gonna keep it real with you, Dr. Karen. I don't like that diagnosis. That's sad.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's sad because you made it. I'm saying it's sad because of that's I
The
believe
experience.
I
That
would
is
agree
sad for
with
the
you.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the state of affairs that we find ourselves in. Charlene F., you said corporate America always gets shook up when they see us shine. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and to Charlene's point, I would agree. I feel like corporate America only sees Black folks when it's money to be made off of Black folks, right? Like that sense of Blackness. I'm reading a book right now. This is a fascinating read, folks. It's a book by a New York Times columnist and journalist David Brooks, and it's a book that's called "How to Know a Person." The art of seeing others deeply and being deeply seen. And Mr. David Brooks goes into, if you read any of David Brooks's columns in the New York Times, he's like a social scientist. He talks about morality and all of those things. One of my favorite columns. And just to know that we are still, like, to say it the way you said, we are still at a place of where a lot of work needs to be done after all of this.
Yeah.
After all of this. And one of the things that he mentioned in his book, which I think is very true, is that we just don't take the time. We're just not intentional about wanting to see people the way they should be seen and they ought to be seen. And I think that speaks volumes. Like, we're so caught up on the money. We're so caught up on the aesthetics that we lose sight of the person behind the money. We lose sight of the person that create the aesthetic, to the point where it becomes this transactional relationship. And I think corporate America, I remember when George Floyd was killed. This is just 3 years ago, Dr. Carey. When George Floyd was killed,
Yeah.
just 3 years ago. And you remember when all these major corporations talk about, man, we stand with social justice and equity and we stand black. I remember turning on Netflix and they blackness, Black Lives Matter, and all of this stuff. And then they even went as far as to say, Doc, oh, well, we're going to throw some money at these causes. And then a year or so after the killing of George Floyd, when they did a report, a number of places did an actual report on which companies actually came through on their promises and pledges. It was less than like 10%.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so disheartening. It is so disheartening. They espouse commitments to do better in the future.
Right.
And the future came. The future was now. The future was then. The future came. And there was still not a ton of progress. Right.
Absolutely.
And so what is that gap? What is that gap? So I work with corporations on narrowing that gap over time. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. And there's this thing around what are the human behaviors that are required to address it. Right. And so, again, not understanding that if we actually ensure that people are fully seen, that they are fully heard, that they are respected, that they are invested in, we actually make more money organizationally, right? And so that way people are bringing their best selves, they're bringing their best work, and they're doing, they have the perfect conditions to maximize the labor force in a way that actually works for everyone. And it's not this transactional nature on, just doing the bare minimum.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, Doc, we're going to take another quick pause, and I'm going to share with you what some of our culture crew is saying about this issue of being seen, and more importantly, combating anti-blackness in corporate America. Folks, continue to post your comments and your questions and your thoughts as we're streaming live on YouTube under Roland Martin. Go to Roland Martin's YouTube page, join us in the conversation, and we'll try to highlight as many of your comments as possible on the other side. So stay with us. The conversation continues to Dr. Kerry Mitchell-Brown as we talk about anti-blackness in corporate America right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
all momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to Dr. Carrie Mitchell-Brown, who is an equity strategist and cultural architect, as we're talking about combating anti-blackness in corporate America. And this is a ongoing conversation, Dr. Carrie. You know, we're not going to cover everything in the next few minutes, obviously, but it's certainly something that affects each and every one of us, whether you're Black or white, whether you're Asian or Latino. It affects us all. Now, so I want to know, and then I want to share with you just some comments. Why should we even be concerned about being seen? Why should we even be concerned about changing the culture of anti-blackness in corporate America? Shouldn't we as Black folks kind of get the message that, look, if they don't want you there, you don't need to be there? What's your take on that?
My take on that is we deserve the same conditions as everyone else to work. And why should that just be reserved? That's a form of anti-blackness in itself, that Black people should just accept the status quo and go someplace else, right? If companies say that they are we're part of the workforce, we help to build this country. Our ancestors helped to build this country, this economy, this place that a lot of organizations and companies are getting rich off of and staying rich on. Yeah, we belong here. We talk about it as if it doesn't belong to us, as if we can't be a part of it, or to change, to instigate change, or to promote change and support the changes that are happening. So we absolutely belong there.
So we belong there. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think I would agree with you. Let me go to what some of our culture crew is saying about this whole conversation, Dr. Carrie. Taylor, you said first comes honesty and transparency. If you have a history of lying, inequity, and misrepresenting the facts, you are a threat, not trusted, not a co-worker. Start there. Would you like to respond to?
Yeah, I mean, we all have to do our individual work. Oftentimes in corporations, we are pitted against each other as Black people. Sometimes there's just few of us. And we know that Black people will take us out faster than white supremacy will take us out. Right? So how do we work together? And am I lying? Like,
no,
I mean, it's
Black
true.
folks will cut. Unfortunately, some of our people will cut your throat faster than a butcher on a slice of steak.
Right. And so
they will just be like, "I'm losing my job over you." Hey, supervisor, this person, I heard a little something. They ready to take you out, man. Like, that's unfortunate. Right.
Yeah, but how do we not fall? Like, how do we not fall for that? How do we go in and support one another in doing this work? If we're the first, how do we leave the door open for others to follow? How do we, mentor? How do we promote? How do we share and create access and opportunity for others? How do we demand that our managers and our leaders do the same?
Absolutely. Lana says, as long as you have racism, you will have anti-blackness. What I do is participate in my company Black ERG, and I voice my opinion in company surveys and speak specifically to Black issues. What's your take on that, Dr. Carey?
Yeah, oftentimes we hear, like, I'm tired of saying the same thing. I'm tired of saying the same thing. Like, if you don't share your experience, like, take advantage of those opportunities to lift up what your lived experience in the organizations might be. And companies have to listen. And one of the things that I often say is to corporate leaders is, this might be hard to hear. And you have to hold at the same time, it is hard to say as a Black person, especially if there's potential that you might lose your job, you might not get a promotion, or you may be seen as a instigator and or a troublemaker. Like, respect, taking those things seriously is important.
That sounds like a gang mentality, though, when you think about it, doesn't it? It's like you talk out, you speak out against us, and we're gonna reciprocate with punishment and consequences against you. Even though, here's the crazy part, Dr. Carey, even though that criticism is given, but the criticism is really a way for us to be, for a way for those companies to be better. But then
Right,
you have,
absolutely.
and then you have folks that'll fight you and say, no, we're not this. You know what? You got an X on your back. You're a target now. And it's
Right.
like, that is absolutely insane. And I
Right.
think that that's part of the problem, you know. And I think that it creates a culture where, you know, just like we see in the street, I'm serious, like just like we see in the street culture, right? Snitches get stitches type of thing, right? Like, you're going to suffer the consequences for speaking truth to power to help a company be better.
That's right. You know, one of the things that I often advise is that we have to create the conditions that is broad enough for us all to journey together and to learn together. Because we're all coming at this at different places and at different rates. We often hear that this is really hard work, and we set it up as being hard, and it really isn't as complex as we think it is. And it is not as simple as living by the golden rule. It's much harder than that. It's complex situations that require simple interventions. And sometimes it's just slowing down. And it may take years. It's prioritizing what has the largest impact that will solve most of the symptoms that people are feeling within organizations, and take some of those on, and then build upon those successes and continuing to do the work. And also, there's individuals that have to do their own work as well. So there's work that individuals have to do that's outside with therapy, right? So if, as a Black person, you are reacting to every time somebody, says something to you, well, you can't do that within organizations, right? So what is the work you individually have to do as a Black person, so you're not triggered every time somebody gives you a look in a way that takes you back to a time where things didn't go quite so well, right? And then what is the organization, what's the company's responsibility to create an environment to where there's not discrimination, to where there's not bias, to there's unfiltered access to opportunity and growth, to where you can really tap into the promise of really talented and smart people within the organization, and you create the conditions to do very good work, and at the same time make a lot of money.
You make a lot of money. There it is. There it is. Look, we got to take a quick pause, Dr. Carey. When we come forward, let's talk about the mental health consequences that you talked about. Impact. Let's talk about the consequences, the mental health consequences for Black folks in corporate spaces and that are part of companies of that encourages anti-Blackness. How we get ourselves out of that quagmire. Folks, the conversation continues on the other side, so stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
we talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to Dr. Carrie Mitchell Brown, who is an equity strategist and a cultural architect, as she does the work of combating anti-blackness in corporate America. And we're talking about it, so we would love to get your take on it, folks, as you join us in the chat as we're streaming live on Roland Martin's YouTube page. Dr. Carrie, let's go back to just getting some more thoughts from our online culture crew. You are not a victim. You said people have to choose, and well, you know what? I'm gonna hold this point until just in a few moments. So you are not a victim. This is a great point that you're making about an exit plan, and I want to talk to you about that, Dr. Carey. But I do want to kind of get your take on the implications. You talked about impact. And often we actually encourage people. I think in our culture of capitalism, I think our culture of social mobility, the drumbeat is get into corporate America, make a name for yourself, make a shitload of money, right? And then at the same time, you know what I mean? Think about people that look like you on their way up to the top, right? But I wonder, like, you're going through all of these things. It's like I'm watching and I know this has been out for a minute. I'm watching the show The Other Black Girl on Hulu, and it's a great movie. It was a great series. But one of the big things that they talk about is just this rise of, you're part of a white company that has been white and stoic and has not, really thought and considered about the interests. They have not matured. They have not evolved over the years. And how this Black woman is a part of this company, and she is like the consciousness of this company, right? And I find that Black folks who go into corporate America, I know our people don't always want to be the consciousness. We don't have to want to carry that weight that we got to be the conscious to wake white folks up in a company that has 400 workers. You know, when people see you, they, oh boy, here come. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot. That's a lot. So talk to us about like the mental health impact of working in the space that you have to claw your way, you have to fight your way to get seen, to be heard, and to have your presence felt.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. And I've been there before, you know, being the only one or only few and being the moral compass. And, you know, for a company, especially around the racial and gender justice work and sort of how they are doing. And it can be taxing. It is important to take care of yourself. And, you know, being very clear on the things that you can change, have the ability to change, can influence, and being clear on the things that you cannot. And, you know, there's individual care that is absolutely required. Who are you partnering with outside of the organization to ensure that you are not going crazy, right? And so, you know, because often it's like, is this real? Is this really happening? And
just like in the show, that's what's happening,
yeah.
right? It's like, I love the show. It says paranoia gets a promotion, and it's like you become paranoid. You lose your sense of self in that process.
Yeah. You do lose your sense. You do lose your sense of self, and you begin to rationalize the things that are not rational. Right. And so how do you stay centered? How do you keep your balance? And what is your valuation on when it's time to go? And so oftentimes I encourage people in companies that are doing this work, especially diversity, equity, and inclusion work, if you cannot change where you live, like change where you live. And for companies who actually cycle through a number of really talented, brilliant, bright Black folks, it's like, hey, what's happening here?
But do you take up, and I hear you, but is that a fight that you encourage people, or you encourage Black professionals to take on? You see what I'm saying? Like, going back to the show, the protagonist in the show, she takes on the fight, right? Based upon some things that happened before she even got in the door. So, but isn't that kind of asking for a lot? You know, if you're a Black professional, you're working for some of these top tier companies, Fortune 500 companies. You might be working for Amazon. You may be working for Walmart. And I'm talking about in a managerial, supervisory capacity, right? You might be working for some telecommunications company, whatever company it is. But then you have to be great at your job, and then you got to be an advocate. You got to be great at your job, then you got to be an activist. You got to be great at your job, and now you represent Black America in the boardroom.
Yeah, I would not encourage anybody to take that on purpose, right? If that is not what you are interested in doing, and understanding what that requires, and having the support systems in place to take care of yourself, right? You can't do it alone. No one can do it alone, Black or white. It takes a whole crew of folks and resources in order to do this work. So no, don't take it on, and don't take it on alone, for sure. And sometimes we find ourselves in those roles because we are one or two, and we hold these personally held scripts from our families, from our education, and just from the sheer desire of what success looks like, or what we believe success looks like. And sometimes we have to be introspective and reevaluate and change, and some of us, we have to experience it before we know we need or want something very different. And the reality is, some people have life situations that require for them to make these strategic choices so that they're set up to do something very differently. And that is a strategy as well.
All right, let's go to Real Brooklyn. You said there is white culture, black culture, and finally corporate culture. Guess which culture is more important? Accept it, play the game, and make that money. Stop tripping.
Yeah, sometimes you have to know how the system works, and being able to know how the system works is important. There's one thing that's for sure.
What's
You
that?
cannot educate your way out of being Black. You can't income your way out of being Black. It doesn't matter if you start at the entry level of the organization, you Black. If you're at the highest level of the organization, that you are Black. And there are certain things that are reserved for Black folks in corporations when corporations don't do the work and
Right.
make the proper investments in ensuring equitable and fair workplaces.
Absolutely. Charlene F., you said you can't change people's mind, but the approach to you will change when you are asked to attend meetings. Secret may be they need your input, but not say it. So I guess she's just talking about the fact that, you know, if you change, if you feel like the culture in your company is not inclusive, then, you know, and you bring these things up and then they still don't change their mind, then it requires, and I agree with Charlene on this, sometimes you just say, you know what, if you decide to stay with that company, hey, I'm gonna change my view on it. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna keep burdening myself with the bad behavior of other people. And
That's
I
right.
think that,
That's right.
and I think that's, and I know some people don't say this, Dr. Carey, but I know that there are people, white people, other Black folk, whoever, that when it comes to Black folks, they like, well, I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to let them worry about that.
Yeah, here's what I say. I say don't overestimate your ability to change someone, and certainly don't underestimate your ability to change. And what I mean when I say that is I don't have an idea of what I want to accomplish inside a corporation when I go in, right? I'm working towards that. But there are often systems, practices, and processes that remind us who's important and who's a nobody, right? And we can work, within that system to try to change it, and try to instigate, something else happening. We'll raise our hand, say, hey, this is our experience. And sometimes we even get the privilege of providing feedback because they'll want to know, resource groups, or how are we doing with Black folks? Please come and tell us. And we'll tell you. And we'll also tell you what we may want you to, what you can do to get a different outcome, and you don't invest in it and you don't change it. There's only so much. So at some point, it's like, hey, I have 2 kids at home that actually count on me to get this paycheck. And so I'm going to let y'all do what y'all do. These are the requirements for me to meet my job. I am a top performer, so I'm going to excel a little bit, and I'm going to keep it moving.
Absolutely. No friends, no new friends, right, Dr. K? No. You're like, you know what? I don't need this. Y'all not coming home with me. At the end of the day, when it comes at 5 o'clock, I'm out. I'm gone.
Yeah. And I can be friendly. We can be friendly.
We can be cordial. You know how, Dr. K, you know how Black folks be like, I'm cordial.
That's right. That's right. We work here. We're co-workers, right?
Right. Right.
And I'm still going to be a professional, and I'm still going to do my job. But the system does not allow itself for different things. Like, corporations are built and structured to get the results that corporations get. And again, without some architectural changes and seismic shifts, that will continue to happen.
There it is. Let me see. Let me get one more comment in before we take our final pause. I think I saw something. Oh, you are not a victim. You said people have to choose their companies wisely. If you don't like the culture of any company, work on an exit plan. I work in corporate
That's right.
America, and the second my company crosses me, I'm out. So it sounds like
That's
you are
right.
not, but you are not a victim. It's like, I am not going to be a victim. I am out. You know, it reminds me, it's like that scene from What's Love Got to Do with It, where they were sitting in the
Right.
diner, and she was like, you only can hit me, you only have to hit me once, height. And she went out the door, and we never saw that sister for the rest of the movie.
That's right. I mean, we're not held captive in these companies. We're not held captives in these corporations. We do
Yeah.
have agency, right? What's your exit strategy? Oftentimes, I plan my job 3 jobs from now. It's a strategy, right? What skills and experiences do I need to ultimately get to where I want to be? Right? If I'm clear on that going in, and if I know the equation, when you get to the point to where it costs you more to be there than that they are willing to pay you, then it's time to go.
Come on, say
Right?
that
But
one
you
more
have
time.
to do something. When it costs you more to be there than what they are willing to pay you, then it's absolutely time to go. And so you have to know how much you're worth. Right? So as a mother, as a working mother, if I can't get to the things that are important to me and experience some of these things that I want to be doing as a working mother, and it costs me additional FaceTime hours just because y'all want to see FaceTime hours, but it's not being productive, and I can't go and to an award ceremony, for my children. Like that cost, that's a huge cost. That's a huge psychological cost for me and my children long term. Y'all can't pay me enough for that.
There it is.
I'm gonna have to
There it
figure
is.
out what's next, right? So planning ahead, and make some rational choices
Yes, ma'am.
around who you engage with, what corporations you engage with, and why. Do your research. There's a
That's it.
bunch of information. There are more resources now than there were 10 years ago on how companies line up on diversity, equity, inclusion. We know that diverse companies, you get better outcomes, and diversity is always shifting, right? Because the
Right,
makeup
right,
of the
right,
workforce is
right.
always, the makeup of the workforce is always shifting. Ask very explicit questions. When you're going in for an interview, you are also interviewing the organization, not them just interviewing you. No, you tell me, what's the experience of Black women in this organization,
Gotcha. Yes, ma'am.
right?
There it is.
And if they can't tell you, that might be a sign that you may not want to park there, or you may want to park there for just a little bit, because there's something that you need to get to, because you're going to need it 2 jobs from now.
There it is right there. Dr. Carrie Mitchell Brown. Dr. Carrie, what's a resource? Is there a website for you? Give us a resource in
Absolutely.
some
You can
place.
find me at carriemitchellbrown.com. That's KERRY, mitchellbrown.com. And I'm at all social media handles as Dr. Carrie M. Brown. You can find me there.
That's what's up right there. Dr. Carrie Mitchell Brown, who is an equity strategist, who is a sister that's been working on the front lines of combating anti-blackness in corporate America, doing the work of diversity, equity, inclusion. Dr. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us on the show. And more importantly, Dr. Carrie, thank you for being so good for the culture.
Hey, thank you. It was a pleasure.